How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, we're going to be going over some common issues with this '03 to '07 Honda Accord. So this is the 7th generation Honda Accord. This is kind of like the post-golden era of Honda, but before it turned into a complete hot mess, which is going on today, in my personal opinion, with the 1.5Ts, direct injection, turbo, etc., etc. So yeah, these were, in my opinion, one of the most reliable Accords to this date. Now, they didn't come without their issues, of course, like anything else. But if these were very well maintained or maintained, period, then chances are they did treat you well. Unfortunately, by now, most of them are in horrible shape. This one being in great condition, besides some hazing here on the headlights. This one is a '06 2.4 liter. If you have a V6, I'll try to make a separate video for that because they did come with their separate issues. So once again, '06 with 199,000 miles. And this is a great example of if you take care of it, it's going to take care of you. And this is still on the original engine, original transmission, no slipping, no burning oil, none of that, because this owner, once again, does take care of the vehicle. So we will go over some common issues. And if you're looking for a reliable option, this could be it for you, as long as, again, it was maintained previously. So let's go ahead and get started with some of the stuff that did go wrong, or some of the stuff you can expect to encounter over the life of the vehicle. So valve cover gasket, pretty self-explanatory. It's rubber, it just deteriorates over time. Nothing you can do about there, and that will leak on any car with given time. So this solenoid right over here, or the strainer, let me try to get out of the sun here, right down here, it is a pretty common leak point. Again, there is a rubber O-ring there and will leak over time. Now this one is still original, which is pretty impressive. But yeah, some of these intake tubes, they also get cut here very easy. We can see some cracking going on in here, but these mounts are in good condition. If this was a V6, probably would have had mounts done at some point. But yeah, some cracking here. We'll keep an eye on this, but so far so good as far as that goes. Radiators, eventually, about year 10 to 12 or so, they do start to leak. This one has been replaced already, so this one is good at this time. Another common issue here is this water valve, and this one actually is leaking, so we did recommend it. Being an older vehicle, we no longer stock these things. So yeah, we're going to recommend this, and he's going to come back for it and get it replaced. It's not horrible, but it is leaking. Very easy to pinpoint. It's not too bad to change either. On the 2.4, on the V6, you have a little bit less space here. Now, if you changed your oil and everything, these cars do not consume oil, although if you go, you know, this is kind of when Honda started introducing that maintenance minder with the percentage basis on these vehicles. I think on the '06 and '07s, the '03 to '05s didn't have that feature just yet. It was kind of a different maintenance minder system. So people like to follow that, and often leads to issues, one of them being burning oil. So this customer here changes the oil every 3,000 to 4,000 miles or so, and this one does not burn oil, although that is something that is kind of common with these vehicles. These also do not have your typical VTC actuator. That kind of came at a later time in the 8th generation Accords, right after this one. So this is still on 520, so that is kind of tribute to why they still maintain, you know, they don't have any issues as far as the VTC system goes and stuff like that. When we started to introduce the 0W20 with some more emission, you know, regulations, that's kind of when all that stuff started to happen. But yeah, very good vehicle overall. We have some hazing on headlights here. That's going to be very common, you know, especially if you live in a hot area or you park your car in the sun a lot. So these compliance bushings here, lower arm bushings, they do fail a lot. These are actually aftermarket. The Honda ones will have an opening. These have rubber all the way around, and these do fail very, very often, along with the lower ball joints here. Now Honda has beefed up the ball joints every generation, and these got better, a lot better than the previous generations, but they did start to fail usually around the 60, 70, 80,000 mile mark. So it's not untypical for them to, you know, need replacement 2 or 3 times by the life of you know, by the time you reach about 200,000 miles or so. Not going to be the case for every vehicle. Some of them may not need them at all. Some of them will need them more than that. So it really depends on the potholes, weather, driving habits, stuff like that. So very good vehicle. Once again, we'll take a walk here to the back, and something super common is these rear calipers, they do end up sticking a lot and the caliper piston freezes, so no longer useful. You could have rebuilt it or buy new ones. We replaced them here with reman ones by Honda. So both sides, and we did new rotors at this time as well. Again, the car does have a lot of miles, and this is the first time it's needing those calipers, which is kind of surprising, although goes to show you the testament of, you know, doing the right thing, replacing your brake fluid, all the fluids like that, and they will last. So other things that fail, struts way later in time. These have been replaced. They are aftermarket, although they do the job, and they typically fail, you know, about 150,000 miles or so. They start to leak. Sometimes if they're not leaking and it's not bouncy, you leave them alone. If they're leaking or bouncy, then go ahead and change them. Also, the links, they do go bad and you have noise over bumps. A lot of people will mistake them for the struts, and it's just your stabilizer links, which are way more affordable than the struts themselves. Sometimes we see the mounts going bad. Typically that one on the 4-cylinder, not too often the front or the rear. There is one here underneath the airbox that also does go bad pretty often. To be honest, it really doesn't do much. It's very thin, but they do break. So something for you to check for. You actually have better visibility on that mount from the bottom. So if you're underneath the car, just take a look up and you should see it. There's also 2 lower trans mounts bolted to the subframe, and sometimes they'll be broken. Most times they will not be broken. Also, make sure you check for any of these hoses as they get older for cracks, leaking coolant on some of these hoses. Take them a squeeze. You know, these are coolant hoses right here, so look for coolant seeping through them. That is something that we do see. The starter does fail pretty often as well. Something very common, especially as the vehicle ages. So you do have to take out the intake manifold here. Some people like to sneak it out and end up breaking a knock sensor. So do yourself a favor, take out the manifold, and you'll save yourself some headaches. And not your DIY job really, but you can do it yourself if you are mechanically inclined. So let's go ahead and walk into the inside of the vehicle and just check out some stuff in there. All right, so as we can see here, this interior is in a great shape, and again, goes to show you that he does take care of the vehicle, both mechanically and, you know, the aesthetics of it, so the interior, the exterior, stuff like that. And one thing that does go bad pretty often is the ignition switch here. Now, not the ignition itself, but the electrical portion, which is on the back side here, and you will hear some buzzing sometimes when starting. People think it's a relay, and it's not. It's the ignition contacts that are actually worn out, and this will and can prematurely damage the starter. So if you go to crank it, this one is good, but if you crank it and you crank it slow, you will hear it. Eventually it'll crank, it'll make the buzzing as you're cranking at any speed. But again, this one is good. Just something to keep an eye out for if you have one of these older Hondas. Window switches, these are still solid. They do get loose a lot of times. And now when these buttons get loose, they'll either make contact going all the way down or all the way up and end up frying the regulator, being this side and the passenger side most times. So also check this side. These are nice and tight, so they will actually wiggle. So again, these are nice and tight, so these are good. On some of the first years of this generation, this display here actually went bad, and we had to replace the printed circuit board. So not an issue with these later models, although something you could definitely be on the lookout for. And these buttons here as well, not on this one. Again, the older models, so on the first years, the 03 to 05 had a button on the side here, and that button would actually fall out. You would just have to take it out, replace the button. Sometimes the spring would get lost and all that, and you would be good to go from there. So all this stuff is pretty small, guys. Nothing major. Engine and transmission are phenomenal on this car, unlike today's vehicles. So just something to keep in mind there when you are shopping for a car. And once again, if you are looking for something reliable and you can find something that has been pretty well maintained from this generation, you should be good to go. Obviously, when buying a used car, make sure you do get it inspected so there are no surprises. Sometimes people like to hide stuff, and the outside may look great and the interior may look great, but mechanically, make sure it is as sound as possible. Also, some check engine light stuff. We do see O2 sensors going bad. Most of them being the secondary O2 sensor, which plugs into underneath the seat here. So it goes from the catalytic converter and comes in through the seat, through the body, and plugs in underneath the seat. So again, not horrible, but something that does go bad. And the catalytic converters also fell on these, having a P00420 code. And most importantly, they do get stolen a lot from these. These are worth a lot of money. So if you have an OEM cat and you have one of these vehicles, make sure you protect yourself at all costs. So if you have one of these vehicles, let me know how your experience has been with them. And here we go again, 199,000 miles. If you're a technician, let me know if there's something out there that you have seen that I did not mention. It's possible I missed something. We do not see too many of these cars anymore. And if you're in the market for one of these cars, also let me know. And again, make sure that you are taking somebody to look at these cars so somebody doesn't try to take advantage of you. So with that being said, I'll catch everyone on the next one.